Hello. So we are going to speak about the electric logistics revolution, and it might sound a little bit abstract to you. It sounded to me. I'm a journalist, and I'm not an expert in the sector. But we are going to speak about very concrete things. We are going to speak about trucks and truck drivers and how they can make the difference. And this is very important because there are 56 million trucks in European roads. The trucks are responsible for 27% of the climate emissions, while they are only 2% of the vehicles on the road. So yeah, like we are speaking about something that, as I said, it can make the difference. So we are going to start with what are your solutions, as you wish.
So then I'm happy to start. So what FERNRIDE does is autonomous electric trucking. So moving from manual and diesel operated towards autonomous and electric. And why we do this is because our supply chains and trucking is really the backbone of global trade. So every item in this room has been probably once on a truck. So like you said, it's in the background, but it's everywhere. So the massive impact of the supply chain transformation can really change the life of everyone in this room. And we believe that this shift towards autonomous and electric will happen not overnight, but in steps. So we don't believe in the big moonshot going directly to the open roads, but starting somewhere where we can create immediate value today. And this is in ports, in distribution centers, and big industrial sites, so geo-fenced areas. And there you can launch a product, or we launch a product with our customers in Europe today. And here we can create the value today. And then step by step going to the open roads and scaling it towards the entire supply chain.
Okay, David, what do you want to add?
Well, we tackle similar problems from a slightly different angle. And to add to your problem statement, I would like to say that the most transported good on European roads is air. Almost a third of all trucks travel empty, mostly because of information asymmetry. This is where we come in. We match demand from big shippers. Think about Coca-Cola that needs to move bottles from A to B with a very fragmented carrier base on the other side. And we bring these two sides to optimize asset utilization. If you haven't understand what I said, then just think about an Uber for trucks.
Okay, so we are talking about a problem from two different point of view, two different perspectives. So I want to know how your solutions can complement each other. So Hendrik, you are talking more about autonomy. So can you tell us how your perspective is different from David's and how you can both complement?
Yeah, so our customers are, at the moment, very big enterprises like Volkswagen, DB Schenker, the Port of Hamburg, operating hundreds of sites all over the world. And what we need to offer them is a plug-and-play solution. So the shift from manual and diesel to autonomous and electric is very, very hard for everyone, since it means change. And change is usually what people don't like, even though they say they like it. And therefore, we need to make this as seamless as possible. And what we do there is creating a plug-and-play solution where we bring all the technology, all the playbooks for how to operate an autonomous electric fleet, even when we speak later about the autonomous solution itself, how you operate a remote operator center. So changing the truck driver's job in the foundational model of itself. This is really what we teach to them and then take them on the journey from launching this on the yards to the open roads in a step-by-step approach.
Okay, David? So electric comes definitely first, then autonomous for us. We're now focused on the electric or electrification of trucking. You have to know that 70% of all trucks are owned by companies that have fewer than 10 trucks, highly fragmented. On the other side, electric truck costs 2, 3, sometimes 4 times more than a diesel truck. So the big dilemma, small trucking companies with maybe 2 trucks, is why would I buy a third truck that costs more than in my entire fleet without knowing how much the truck is worth at the end? What are the true operating costs to run an electric truck? And is anyone paying a premium to justify this additional risk and potentially the additional cost? And this is why last week we announced a new joint venture with Scania, one of the leading truck manufacturers, where we now offer, with a pay-per-use model, the possibility to adopt truck with a low barrier entry. And you pay per kilometer. Think about car sharing without the sharing, but you pay per kilometer with everything included. This solves the one side. The other side is the utilization side. And this is when sennder comes in, because we can go to the same trucking company that gets the truck with a pay-per-use model and say, listen, for the next year, we guarantee utilization, effectively minimizing the adoption risk of a new technology.
Okay. We are talking about a sector that is quite traditional. We are talking about a sector in which truck drivers are, on average, they are quite old. They are not digital natives. How to encourage them to adopt these kind of technologies, to digitalize the sector, to electrify the sector?
When I started sennder in 2015, I thought, it's going to be easy. We're going to develop an app, and then we're going to have visibility on everything. It turned out that back then, not every truck driver had a smartphone. And when they got the smartphone, they had a private smartphone, which was not of property of the company that was employing them and that would get the order from our side. And then when we solved all of that, we still found out that there is a strong pushback to use technology. So how do we change? And this is by highlighting the benefits from it and incentivizing the adoption. One thing that works amazingly well is for us 3-day payments. These small companies, again, very fragmented. They check the bank account and know how much money they have to pay fuel or maybe salaries. If we say we can pay within 3 days, the one thing we ask from you is that you use our app, and the moment you upload the proof of delivery, we generate an invoice on your behalf, a credit note, and pay you within 3 days if you want to. This is when they say, okay, wait a moment, I can spend my weekends doing something else than writing invoices, and I improve my cash flow in the process.
Okay. And what about autonomy? I guess that could change the life of any truck driver across Europe. And we all know that truck drivers, they have really hard conditions. They hardly see their families. So how do you see the routine of a truck driver if it would be like autonomy?
Yes, this is really core of our mission to transform the supply chains towards safety, efficiency, sustainability, but also making the truck driver's job ready for the 21st century. And what I mean there is that we apply a very new approach to autonomous driving. So we don't even pursue the dream of full autonomy. We say 80, 90, 95% autonomy is good and good enough. And the last percentages, the tricky situations, are kept for the human. And by combining human intelligence and artificial intelligence in a hybrid approach, you can achieve the business outcome, what is higher productivity, more efficiency, filling those vacancies in the 400,000 truck drivers jobs that are vacant at the moment in Europe, and offer the truck driver a way better life. So let's take an example from one of our customers in a port. When you are transporting containers on a port from A to B, there are happening accidents. So not every single day, but very often across the supply chain, people die, unfortunately, as containers are dropped on trucks and humans that are in those areas. And those people don't have to be there. When we apply automation, we now take those truck drivers out of the cabins, bring them into an office, and allow them to remotely drive the trucks when they need assistance. And the main parts of the journey are driven autonomously. But, for example, precisely maneuvering under the ship-to-shore cranes, this is a tricky task that needs this human assistance. There, the truck driver can assist the autonomous vehicle, and thereby we have already a ratio of 1 truck driver for 4 trucks today. And the more data we collect, the higher the efficiency of this single truck driver gets. And we are not providing only a safer job, but also a higher valued job, so that those truck drivers that are really the overlooked people in our supply chains, that are on the road sleeping in their trucks away from their families, are now having a really high value job and can have a better life. And this is also super motivating for me as a founder. So in our company, we have already employed 25 truck drivers that help us build the technology hand in hand with engineers and give the feedback. And even for them, there are new career opportunities where we have truck drivers that joined our engineering team since they have so much knowledge about how the technology has to work in practice that they can teach our engineers a lot how the solution can be improved.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's really interesting that you're working with truck drivers, and I guess that could be like a real life changer for them. So I would like to know what are the main obstacles. So can you name, each of you, what is like the main obstacle that you are finding?
So for really widespread adoption, we need to overcome an obstacle on the vehicle side as we are driving with heavy-duty trucks, also with heavy batteries that are required to transport a lot of energy for those trucks that you can really drive also the long distances. And as the batteries are so expensive, it's really hard to create a positive business case, and that's why David's business model with the pay-per-use makes so much sense for the smaller companies. So when you can reduce the adoption cost and the high battery prices, but this will not change overnight. I believe you can also tackle this from a different perspective, not only from the business model innovation, but also from the applications. So we focus right now on those geofenced areas where you are driving shorter distances and therefore also don't need that heavy batteries, the large batteries, so their electrification makes more sense. And the other big obstacle is the charging infrastructure. So there is currently not this megawatt charging what is necessary for heavy-duty trucks along our motorways. And for our use case now on the port, it's very easy to adopt charging infrastructure on site since it's your own property. This is really the first use case where electrification makes a lot of sense. And when you now think one step larger on a system level, combining electrification with autonomy in a joint solution, you can take the productivity gains from the autonomy side and subsidize this costly adoption of the electrification part and really work like a catalyst in the supply chain and do this in a step-by-step approach.
Okay.
Definitely infrastructure. I would summarize it in the blockers, in my opinion, are sometimes policymakers that have to unlock these opportunities, such as charging infrastructure, which goes hand to hand with also private investments. But I think policymakers and the public investment will play an important role, and we need more of that. But when I think about the future and the autonomous future, I think we're going to see a breaking point. You mentioned truck drivers and an aging population. Average age of a truck driver today in Germany is around 50 years old. If you look at the demographics, and see when they're going to be retiring, add new truck drivers that come on the market, and they're very few because it's not a cool job. It's definitely not a work-life balanced, job where you have that. And this is why sooner or later we're going to get to a breaking point where the big headline in the newspaper will be no milk in the supermarket. That's a bit what happened in the UK a couple of years ago. Already today, by the way, there are already 500,000 truck drivers missing, and it's increasing too, you said?
2 million by 2026.
Yeah, so it's a huge problem. And when we get to that breaking point, and once we see it's changing the way we live, because we don't have the milk in the supermarket and the fuel in the fuel station, if we still need fuels by then policymakers will wake up and say, okay, we need to address this quickly. And this is when I think we're going to see the first autonomous trucks on the long distance, from the highway entry to the highway exit, maybe with a separate lane, with some infrastructure to make it safe, no kids playing there, and then protect the last trucking mile from the exit of the warehouse, from the exit of the highway to the warehouse, where then the traditional truck drivers, aging population will do the shuttling, pick up the trailer, drive it to the warehouse and back, will allow them to sleep at home every night instead of every 2 weeks, will allow them to go to bed every night at the same time instead of waking up every night at a different time, and have a better life. And this is where I think we're going to see an adoption, because as you demonstrated, the technology is already there. It's not only ports, there's mines, there's so many use cases where we already have it. It's just that on the roads, there's more risk, and policymakers will have to, in my opinion, see the shock event before they will really unleash the full potential of this technology.
So what is your plan to attract these new generations? Are they going to need to be more educated digitally? Because we all know that the profession of truck drivers are infamous to have these heart conditions. So what is your plan to train them, the new generations, to attract them to the sector?
So under the assumption that we can apply this automation approach to our supply chain in a step-by-step approach, the profession of the truck driver will change to becoming a manager of autonomous vehicles. So the truck driver job will stay, but it will evolve. So becoming this remote operator, you need different skills. So you need to use a computer. You need to be willing to come to an office and work in a team. So this is a little bit different than being on the road all by yourself. And also the truck driver's license per definition will change. So what we're currently building is a truck driver's license of the future, a remote operator license, where you go through a training of 2 weeks, learn it in simulation, learn it in practice, learn a theory. And I don't believe that we can only look here at the younger generation, but we also need to look at the truck drivers that are currently there in the system. They don't like the job, but this job has to be done. And when you can provide them better job opportunities and make them more productive, this is one perspective, but also opening up a perspective for younger people, but also for a more diverse workforce. So currently there are only, or mainly, male truck drivers. So
93%.
93%. So those numbers are shocking, since the job is terrible working conditions.
Okay.
But when you now come to an office, it's way better.
Yeah. Because we are trying to make this topic more concrete, what is your timeline? When are we gonna see this transformation transitioning? What do you think are the following steps?
I think we have a slightly different perspective on how this will come. For me, it's this breaking point and then the long distance. I believe you start in closed environments and then go, let's say, on public roads. So I think this is something that we have to keep in mind when we think about timelines. For me, if you look at how many truck drivers will retire and how many will come and extrapolate what the demand for truck will be, I think in the next 5 to 7 years, we're going to get to this breaking point where we're going to wake up and realize, oh, the backbone of the economy is not rolling any longer. And then it will take 1, 2, 3 years until policymakers get everything in place. So I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see the first trucks again on the highway, separate lane, long distance, with a protected category then for the last mile from the highway to the warehouse.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I believe in this step-by-step approach and also the application of the use cases, that we see it first in geofenced areas, then in short-haul trucking applications that are highly repetitive. So one of our customers is Volkswagen. When they have a production site, there are trucks that are traveling 100 times a day between the suppliers, bringing, for example, seats into the main production plant and just traveling back and forth. And this is a route that you can easily electrify, but also automate. So next to the highly structured routes on highways. And for me, it's not an or, but really an and, so that you have many different applications for autonomy and electrification. There are different kind of obstacles. It's usually due to the infrastructure, what has the longest lead times in terms of change, where we need also policymakers enabling an ecosystem of faster adoption. And what we see currently also on the private market, that even the truck OEMs that are usually competing in this low profit logistics industry, where margins are very thin and competition is fierce, now collaborating and saying, hey, we make an alliance and build the charging infrastructure together. So the big OEMs are doing this here in
Absolutely,
Europe.
because the business models will fundamentally be different when the autonomous future is there. Why? Today they sell to the small trucking companies. Remember, I told you 70% of all trucks are owned by companies with fewer than 10 trucks. In that future, they won't have to buy a truck. The ownership will still with the manufacturer operator, won't have to hire and manage a driver, and won't be able to optimize the cost. So the customers of a truck manufacturer in that future is going to be It's still to be defined who it's going to be, but it's not going to be, when we have full autonomous trucks, the customers that they save today. So they have to evolve that, because just producing an asset at a high quality and a good price point will not be sufficient to build a competitive advantage. And these big companies need to start thinking today, how can I position myself for that future? Because they need time to change. We already, with 1,000 employees, I feel like how we're not any longer a speedboat and we can change, okay, let's try something new, let's do it. It's 1 year planning, 2 year planning to get there. Big truck manufacturers, big logistic players have even longer time horizons to really do this transition, and that's why they have to start in the next 2-3 years to really identify how we're going to do that. And that's also why we're so lucky that Scania started this joint venture with us to sell electric trucks with a pay-per-use model.
Okay.
I think on the I think there's one point to add on the transformation of the business model. A truck manufacturer today, and in the past 50 years, was really good in two things: making really comfortable cabins for the truck drivers, since this was the scarce resource on the market. Since you couldn't find truck drivers, you need to have a nice cabin as a logistics company to attract truck drivers. So this is one core competence. And the other one is making good diesel engines that can run for thousands of kilometers a day. And both competences are not relevant anymore in 10 to 15 years when it goes into electrification and also autonomous. Why do you need a cabin when there is no truck driver anymore? So a huge transformation ahead of the entire industry, and it will be very tough if we are not moving quickly together. But I believe that you can do this in a joint approach, and then the future will be very bright for everyone.
Very interesting. And just to wrap up, if you could ask one thing, only one thing to accelerate your main wish, what would you like to have? Is it regulation? Is it?
For me, charging station for electric trucks.
Charging infrastructure on open roads.
Okay. So do you think in a very near future we will find the best restaurants in the road next to the charging stops? Because we know truck drivers, they know where to go to eat. So
it's even better when they can eat together with their families at home as they are working from an office, right?
That's a really good way to say it. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope we help you to understand better the freight industry and how this revolution is happening already and where this is going to lead us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.